Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Hi, I am Simran Sarur and I'm here with advocate Vrinda Grover, who practices in the Supreme Court and specializes in human rights and women's rights issues. So today we're going to talk about abortion, and so India is among the first countries to have legalized abortion, and it is said to also be one of the most liberal abortion laws. So do you think it needs to change, and if yes, why?
I think we need to go back a little bit to see how this whole business of the abortion law started in India. We actually have a provision in the Indian Penal Code, and as we know, the Indian Penal Code is something that is part of the colonial legacy. It's a statute that was actually drafted by Lord Macaulay, and there is a provision in that which actually makes voluntarily causing miscarriage of a woman who's pregnant an offense unless it is done for saving the life of the woman. Now clearly that harks back to 1898. However, the Indian Penal Code actually still carries that provision. Now because in India a woman could seek an abortion, we needed to create a statute which would bring an exception to that offense, so that a doctor, because obviously when a doctor conducts a surgery or a DNC for purposes of abortion, that is done voluntarily. It should not fall within the purview of a crime. Therefore, the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act of 1971 was crafted. Now again, we are looking at something that goes back to 1971. We are now in 2018, and much has changed, not only in our own understanding and our jurisprudence of a woman's sexual autonomy, a woman's reproductive rights, but also in terms of medical technology. So yes, women can seek abortion in India. It does not carry the baggage of what the West does. And the West has the whole, and so does say places like many countries in South America, where due to the overbearing presence of Christianity or church, women's right to reproductive rights have been totally marginalized, and they can't access abortion or seek abortion. So India does give certain places women can, in certain circumstances, women can seek abortion under the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act.
Do you think, as it stands, the Act of 1971, do you think it needs to be changed to accommodate, for example, the time frame, which is limited to 20 weeks? Do you think that needs to be extended? What changes do you think need to be made?
I think what we are seeing, and we've seen a spate of judgments from both the High Courts and the Supreme Courts, where individual women have repeatedly had to approach the High Court or the Supreme Court, seeking that they be permitted, because they are seeking an abortion post the 20-week limit, and on each instance she has to go and knock at the door of the court. With the advance of technology, there are certain, for instance, deformities of the fetus that are now discovered after the 20-week period. At that stage, the woman may not wish to carry the pregnancy any further, and therefore they've gone to the court. The court then invites a medical board and seeks the opinion of medical experts on the basis that is this the cause that she's saying in terms of fetal abnormalities? Does that actually exist? If this pregnancy is carried to full term, will the child born have these abnormalities? Will there be serious physiological issues over there? And what would be the impact of an abortion at this stage? The health impact on the woman herself. And on those counts, we have seen that the High Court and Supreme Court have repeatedly allowed for abortion, where the medical practitioners, usually a medical board, has confirmed that yes, there are fetal abnormalities of a very grave nature, which will, in many cases, they've even said that, it's unlikely that this pregnancy can be carried to full term, or unlikely that the fetus would actually survive given the abnormalities. And in those cases, they have then said, okay, the abortion should be allowed, provided that the medical experts have also said that at this stage, the harm caused to the woman in terms of health would not be so severe. If, of course, there have been instances where the doctors have said, yes, there are reasons, but the damage to the woman's health can be so life-threatening for her that we would not advise an abortion at this stage. So clearly we see that there are changes in technology which enable abortion at a later stage. There are reasons why women are coming forward at a later stage. I think, however, in this whole gamut of things, what is the piece of the puzzle that we need to focus on is where is the woman in this? Who is taking the decision? Is it really the woman and her reproductive rights that are center stage, or are there other considerations that seem to continuously weigh upon the mind of the court, mind of the medical practitioners and the legislators, because the amendment that is sought to be brought forth, of course, we don't see it coming forward at any time soon, extends it to the 24-week period, which is available in other jurisdictions, other international jurisdictions also.
Yeah. So the amendments were proposed in 2014. Why do you think it's taking so long to put them in place and for those suggestions to materialize and become law?
I don't think reproductive rights of women and the fact that women should be able to have a very clear say in ensuring whether they want the pregnancy to continue or not continue is not something that the parliament, the legislators or the government is particularly thinking about. It's not an issue of concern. It's certainly not an issue on which you're going to get votes. And we see that increasingly those legislations are coming to the fore or grab the attention of Parliament and the government, which seem to have some other interest beyond what the law may want. So, and we know that, rights of women have never been the center of any politics in India, unless it is to garner votes for other reasons. So reproductive rights of women or women's control over their bodies to be enhanced is not an issue that anybody takes seriously, and we don't see any movement across parties or of any government in pushing this forward.
So earlier this year, Ireland had a referendum related to abortion, and they overturned the constitutional law that prohibited abortion by an overwhelming majority. Since in India we can't seem to get past, these laws not coming into place and not materializing, do you think a referendum is something we need, and do you think it's possible in a country like India?
Well, two things. First, we have to understand that in Ireland, because of the very central place that Christianity occupies in their socio-political life, there was a prohibition on a woman seeking abortion under all circumstances. And in fact, it was a woman of Indian origins whose death, due to disallowing her to seek abortion, led to this entire momentum which got the constitutional referendum then. Unlike that in India, we do not have such a strong barrier. There are till 12 weeks, 20 weeks, women can seek abortion. Of course, there are a host of aspects about stigma attached to abortion, health facilities not being available, information not being known, women not taking the decision, where they're not permitted by family to take the decision whether she should seek an abortion. So there are a range of socio-legal, economic barriers that do exist. But we didn't have the prohibition that there is in Ireland. It is true that we don't see the present government as being particularly interested in securing serious rights of women. It seems to be more about lip service to rights of women. However, under the Indian constitutional framework, we don't have a concept of referendum. It is something that is peculiar to European countries. Ireland does it, Britain did it for Brexit, Switzerland recently held on other issues. Our constitution does not envisage a referendum. Our constitution envisages lawmaking either through parliament or in certain places, in exceptional circumstances, Supreme Court has stepped in when there is a gap in the law through its judgment. Also, and I would be very anxious if we were to open issues like this for public determination, because I don't believe that in India we would necessarily see a public vote which would say women should have a right over their bodies and women should control their bodies. We do know that in the public sphere, in our cultural practices, in our religious domain, in many, many social customs, women's subordination is reinforced through many, many ways. In fact, I think the fact that the Indian Constitution talks about equality of caste, gender, religion, class is actually something that we need to hold on to very, very carefully, because that doesn't necessarily mean that the public opinion, the majority opinion, would necessarily believe in equality. And I think that's something that we have got from the Constitution, and the majoritarian view in this country, as we are seeing, is becoming increasingly regressive rather than progressive.
Yeah. So how do you think then we can fast track this process?
Well, I don't think it can be fast tracked immediately. I think what we need to do is to raise the issue. And I think the fact that there have been so many judgments of the Supreme Court and High Court, I think the question should be staring at everybody in the face. That is, every time is a woman expected to approach the court? And we are obviously talking of women here who have access to certain health facilities, who are able to get a diagnosis on the fetus at a time where they can then access the legal system. Most women have no access to health facilities. They definitely don't have access to superior technology which can diagnose this for them, nor do women have access to the legal system. And therefore, this is something around which we will have to raise awareness, we will have to raise the issue with the government, and it would be really through mobilization of women's groups and health activists who would then be seeking this kind of change. And India, actually, after ratifying the CEDAW Convention, has to secure reproductive rights of women. And it is not just about fetal abnormality. While we've seen most of the cases that have gone to court are around fetal abnormality or in cases of rape, I think we need to envision the termination of pregnancy from the point of view of the woman at the center and her control over her body, and which would actually include multiple actions that the government can take. Why, for instance, was contraception not available? What is the penetration of contraception care in this country? How many women actually can access contraception? To access contraception, what is the link between access to contraception and the social empowerment of women? What is the link between health facilities being available and accessible, and public health facilities being available, and women being able to access this? So it would have to actually come in as a bundle. And abortion will not be able to stand alone, and you won't be able to get the right to terminate pregnancy unless we are able to talk of contraceptive care, unless we are able to talk of health facility, and all that we see is not on anybody's radar as areas where they need to pay attention and work towards.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking with us.